Thank you everyone for joining us today. Just take a minute here for quick introductions so you know the representatives that will be leading the discussion. Again, Steve Gatto here from Proficient. Again, a director in our commerce practice, and briefly, just a little bit about me, just so you know, I spent a lot of time at big technology vendors like the IBMs of the world, and then been on the system integration side for approximately the last decade or so of the career, stint at Publicis Sapient, and then most recently here at Proficient, where we do a lot of focus on optimizing supply chains, mainly through order management. So again, thank you so much for joining us today, but we have a distinguished guest with us also. So if I may pass it over to Sonoma for another quick introduction.
Well, hello. Thank you, Steve, for the intro, and thank you to all that have joined for today. My name is Sonoma Taylor. I'm the Vice President of Solution Delivery here at Sally Beauty. Within my portfolio, I'm responsible for our merchandising and supply chain portfolios, as well as our enterprise systems, which includes our order management system that we'll be talking about a little bit today. Perfect.
Thank you, Sonoma. Well, for those that are able to join us right now live on the webinar, or maybe you're listening on the recording, hey, either way, just a little bit of context how we structured today. We've really broken today's discussion into three themes. So today's discussion, you saw the topic earlier, but really broken it out into three subject areas. I'm going to provide a little bit of context for each one of these subject areas, and then pass it over to Sonoma, who will give us some really interesting insights on some of the investments and initiatives going on within Sally Beauty Holdings. Okay, so without further delay, let's go ahead and get started with this first theme. You see the title that's pictured on the top of the screen, and here we want to start talking about just this undeniable prioritization that is going on in today's market around supply chain operations. Again, you're going to hear from Sonoma in just a second in some things, again, that they're doing to invest in optimizing the supply chain. But I want to give you just some additional brief context to this prioritization that we're seeing in today's marketplace. But I think it's important when we see what's going on today to also talk about the growing role of physical assets. Specifically, there was a story that came out from NRF, or the National Retail Federation, that talked about for the US, specifically for retailers, that we've announced twice as many store openings relative to store closings over the last 18 months. Really interesting, kind of talking about the optimism, kind of the importance of physical stores. Now, a lot of this was reflected in the openings from like dollar, discount, off-price, warehouse stores, but it was quickly followed there by a number of store openings in that sector of specialty and specialty retail. But also folks that have just been digital-only sellers that continue to get into the physical world. Amazon continued to be a great example here, well over just dozens of stores now across North America. So anyway, we'll talk a lot about digital today, but we talk about investments in optimized supply chain. Let's not forget those physical assets and a lot of other investments. Another complementary example here is around fulfillment, specifically last mile. I think a really interesting example we've seen here as of recent is another big player on the internet, specifically in e-commerce, and that's in Walmart. Right, their launch of something that's called Go Local. You've probably seen this. This is their own delivery network. So this is primarily designed for Walmart omni-channel orders to be fulfilled in a local proximity. And interestingly enough, not only are they fulfilling their own orders, but it's a service they're marketing to others. And they just recently landed their first customer in this, and that's in Home Depot. So think about this. So investments in supply chain, Walmart now, Go Local, delivering their own orders, but also marketing this to partners like Home Depot. Walmart will be delivering orders in local proximities for Home Depot. So just interesting stuff that's going on there. And last but not least, in context, I wanted to show you today was around some research that we've commissioned here at Proficient. And that's what you see depicted on the screen. And this research was with a company called BWG Strategy. And they went out and they interviewed professionals like yourself, if you're joining us today. And the results are interesting. I'm just sharing a couple perspectives with you here. On the left-hand side of the screen here, you see just a perspective on people that work in the supply chain, various roles. But what are you investing in? Well, it shows recent past investments, it shows current investments today, And then what are you going to be investing in by the end of next year? And it's no surprise that supply chain operations are continuing to grow in investment areas, just in the roles that they continue to work in. And if you look at the right-hand side, what does that graph depict? Well, it's the top areas that they're actually investing in around optimizing supply chain. It's no surprise. What do you see top of the list here? It is areas like order management and order orchestration. It is areas like inventory visibility and corresponding fulfillment operations, like what are the implications for a warehouse or even transportation network. So we're happy to share this full report with you. It's a research-based study. It was just released about a month ago. If you're interested, contact us after the webinar. We're happy to provide this to you. But with that context, let's go ahead and hear from Sonoma. Over to you to hear about some of the just interesting improvements, investments going on within Sally Beauty Holdings.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So yeah, Sally Beauty certainly could be a case study for the information that Steve has just recently walked us through a little bit. I've been with Sally for 6 years now, and the last 4 of that really have been hyper-focused on major transformative capabilities here at Sally for a couple of reasons. Sally Beauty Holdings has both a B2C focus in our Sally brand, but then we also have a B2B focus in what we call Beauty Systems Group, which is branded Cosmocross. And traditionally, we have been, very focused on our brick and mortar presentation, and then we also kind of just had these other channels. But we were, admittedly behind in how we support a digital customer in our recognition and celebration of those digital channels as real sales channels for Sally Beauty Holdings. And so over the last 4 years, we have really doubled down on looking to cloud partners to kind of modernize our DC operations. We have implemented for the first time an order management system. We leverage IBM Sterling for that capability, and we knew that we needed technology that would be more sophisticated and begin to recognize that digital customer, look for inventory appropriately across both our DC and store network. So we saw that as a major pillar of our digital growth. And then if we're going to start, considering ourselves an omni-channel retailer, we had to take a new look at our inventory accuracy across our stores and our DCs. Because as you know, if you're going to leverage that inventory for store fulfillment, for order fulfillment, it's got to be right. You've got to be confident in your presentation of that to the customer, so that if she were to select a BOPIS or a same-day delivery offering, that we would know for sure we have that inventory. And so to that end, we also did a significant implementation of JDA software, now Blue Yonder or Panasonic, depending on if you're keeping up with what's going on with them. But we've done a major implementation across our merchandising and supply chain portfolios, where we have modernized our space and floor planning, our demand planning, which is really key to the whole thing, our fulfillment strategies, and also the way that we interact with our vendors in terms of creating purchase orders and managing that data. It has really been quite a 4-year run, and we're very excited to be this far along in our journey, in that, at this point, the software is deployed, and we're now able to kind of turn our attention to optimizing both the deployment itself. Do we have the configuration right? Are we growing? How is it going, since we've deployed? And then also continue to look at our business processes. Do the teams, are they interacting with the software the way they thought they were? Is their process evolving and we need to kind of go with them a little bit? So we're into what we kind of refer to as an optimization type phase of our growth. And then, so we're going along, we're doing all these deployments, and then we had a global pandemic, which was, pretty exciting for everybody involved. But we were grateful that we had the opportunity to have these foundational components in place, and then to be able to leverage them as the shopping habits for our customers and many customers completely changed. Us, like many retailers, our stores were closed to the public during the height of the pandemic, which meant that if we still wanted to ship beauty products, our customers were going to have to get that in some kind of ship-to-me or curbside capability, which gratefully we were ready to go with. Very young in our infancy there, but we were ready to go with it. And I think what's important about that then was that we were able to leverage our technology to keep us going during, what might have been considered unprecedented times in shopping. But more so than that, through that process, I know it's true for our family as well, our customers have developed new shopping habits and new expectations. You know, curbside is mighty, mighty convenient for many of the shopping excursions that we do. The idea of buying online and picking up in store, just kind of a quick in and out, I think is going to continue to stick with our customer, as is same-day delivery, because many people, whether they feel confident to go out in public or not at this point, the convenience of those delivery methods will not be something that they'll quickly forget. So we had to figure out how to do those things out of necessity, but now we have the opportunity to continue to enhance those as those become true staples of our customers' shopping habits. So we are both exhausted from the from the transformation that we've been working through, but we're super excited to be able to have it in place and to be able to leverage it going forward.
Sonoma, that's great. Boy, I heard a couple of things there. Just one, just the term of just some of the highlights you just shared with us, that being 4 years, that's a lot in what I would consider a pretty short amount of time. So
yeah,
congratulations there. And I think the other reference I see here is really interesting. I think many times people just pigeonhole this into just retail scenarios, but I think the B2B service arm, or just, again, what your organization does to service, not consumers, but stylish professional. So those professional stylists and that, area of B2B transactions is also another really interesting area investment for Sally Beauty Holdings.
It really is, and it's a major sales channel for us on the Beauty Systems Group side, as you can imagine. And during the pandemic, when some of our warehouses couldn't operate because they were in areas that were not allowed to do so from a legal perspective. And so now we've got, uncertainties around our inventory availability, and then you layer on the traditional supply chain disruptions that we've seen and are still kind of unwinding from now. We really were able to leverage our order management system that we had implemented. And for those that don't know, Sally Beauty has a very close working relationship with Proficient, and they're our partner for our OMS implementation. So little plug for them. But we were able to leverage that to be able to find the inventory wherever it was in our network, stores or DCs, and continue to service those channels. Now, many of those stylists were not working because, again, they were not allowed to. So we did see kind of a temporary decline, but as the salons began to reopen, the demand for getting their salons back in inventory and being ready to service their clients whose hair has grown out, it's a color they don't like, and all of those things, we had strong demand and really good capability to meet that demand where it was and get back in business. And I think overall we were very pleased with how we came through that pandemic.
Interesting, just market coverage on all of those investment areas that your organization has done and some of the benefits you've seen. So anyway, encourage folks to go out and research those really interesting articles. So again, a number of different investment areas. So very impressive, very impressive. Okay. Again, friendly reminder for those that are attending, if you had a question, again, just encouraging you to use the interactive features of the tool today. So again, put your questions in the chat and we'll get to those for sure. Okay. With that, I'm going to transition to this first topic, this first theme that we just discussed, which was around all these different areas investment that we've seen around the supply chain. And so with that, we're going to transition a little bit now to a complementary but relative area. So, and that's the processes. So now think of the space that we work in. Again, we're talking about optimizing supply chains, a lot of implications here for order management, but many other complementary, either people, process, or technology initiatives that are doing this. But I want to focus now to the second theme here, which is really going to talk about the business processes that are enabling what we'll just refer to as this omni-channel fulfillment. Again, I'm going to provide just some brief context here on this second theme, but it's going to be specific to order fulfillment capabilities. And then Sonoma will be able to tell us about, again, some of the interesting things that are going on within Sally Beauty Holdings. Okay, and a friendly reminder, as I start talking about processes here, if you didn't pick up on it on the previous slide, that was a shopping bag picture that was taken from sallybeauty.com. Now we're talking about this focus on omni-channel fulfillment processes. And I don't know if you picked up on that, but in that shopping bag option, as a consumer, how do I want to take redemption for this product? There was an option there for same-day fulfillment. So for certain areas of the assortment in certain markets, what an option now. A lot of investment there that says, right, this is an expectation from consumers, all these omni-channel fulfillment scenarios. And what if I want to get it the same day that I place the order? So there was again, a business process investment that we were really proud to be able to deliver together with the team at Sally Beauty Holdings. And that's just one quick example. But what I wanted to pick for you here on the screen, just a little bit more context, is another piece of research that Perficient actually commissioned, this time with a group that we all know in the marketplace today. And this was done in conjunction with Forrester Research, so the Forrester Analyst Group. And again, happy to share this report with you. And what this research-based study actually did was, together with Forrester, we went out and did another set of interviews with your peers. So we talked to a number of different professionals that operate in the space of supply chain, e-commerce, inventory responsibilities. And I'm just depicting for you here one of the takeaways or one of the results of this study. And it might maybe no surprise to those that are joining us on the phone today, but the first thing we're depicting here in kind of the gray area that's highlighted for you is just some of the top areas of investment for your peers. What is going on in the marketplace today? When you think about the processes that are being invested in, I just talked to you about one at sallybeauty.com, but these are the other things that, Sonoma, to your earlier point, that again, people with leadership roles in this space continue to focus on just to meet consumer expectations and how the market is changing. So no surprise here, we see process investments in area like, how can I provide inventory visibility to my customers, and all the omni-channel fulfillment scenarios that we want to address today. So the buy online, pick it up and in store, ship it from a store, have it shipped to a store, whether that's picked up inside the physical location or curbside, Sonoma, like you talked about earlier. And you even see some implications here to initiatives around this growing interest for things like control towers, right? Where now I get more visibility to all the different connections in the supply chain. I could be notified of disruptions. How can I adjust there? Even including like, how can I run what if scenarios if I want to make changes to either inventory or fulfillment scenarios. So this just again gives you a depiction on some of the investment areas in the processes when we think about, again, omni-channel fulfillment. Again, if you're interested in this report, contact us after this webinar. We'd be happy to share it with you. Again, something we commissioned with Forrester. Just a little bit of context there, that's all. And so I think at this point, with that context, Sonoma, throw it back over your way, and you're going to tell us, I think, about some other really interesting improvements, enhancements you guys continue to do in the process space.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
And I want to preface this by saying I hope, as a result of this conversation, you're not hearing that, Sally Beauty has it all figured out and we're perfect. I think quite the contrary. Sally Beauty was, going through a little bit of a trial by fire, and I'm going to talk you through kind of how we have evolved so far. But this is going to be an evergreen process. 2020 was all about a pandemic, but future time will be about something else. Our customers' shopping preferences will continue to evolve. This is something that, in our minds at Sally Beauty, we needed to establish a foundation of strong capabilities, both from a software perspective as well as a business process perspective, not because that's what we're going to use forever, but because they create flexible solutions for us to continue to optimize and evolve over time. And I think that's really the name of the game, going forward. Gartner refers to that concept as composable architecture, where you've got really strong components in place and then they work together and you can fine tune them individually so that overall, end to end, you have a stronger solution. And I think what I'm about to describe here kind of illustrates the way Sally Beauty is going through that. So as I kind of alluded to before, and Steve did as well, prior to our OMS implementation was in August of 2019. So just let that sink in for a second. We did not have any capabilities around modern order management before August of 2019. And then fast forward a little bit, we initially leveraged our OMS implementation for fulfillment from DCs for both of our channels, Sally Beauty and Cosmoprof. And then in February of 2020, I cannot believe it was just that recent. February of 2020, we deployed a 16 store pilot for ship from store for Canada. And so then we had a global pandemic and all of our DCs closed. So between 16 stores or rather all of our DCs closed. So between 16 stores in February of 2020 and the end of March 2020, we had actually rolled our ship from store capability out to 3,000 Sally locations. And because our stores were not available for our customers to shop, our digital demand grew on the Sally side from about 250K daily. I mentioned we didn't have a lot of sophistication around digital channels, to $1.6 million daily sustained. So we just experienced explosive growth, and this is where I'm talking about the evolution of it would have to come in. So instead of fulfilling our digital orders from 3 DCs on the Sally side, we now had 3,000 shipping nodes to work from. So the good news is we've got tons of inventory. The other news is, depending on what you're ordering, we may be splitting your shipments, and I'm getting some of it from the Northeast region, some of it from the South, and shipping it to you over multiple shipments. Our customers at that point were excited to be able to get their merchandise in one way or the other, but we realized that's really not sustainable from a cost model over time. But I think it was really necessary, our approach at that point. So as we have continued to learn from our ship from store implementation on both banners, and then also introduced our 2-hour, 3-hour delivery, now is the time for us to revise our approach to what should our shipping node network look like. Is 3,000 stores the right number? Is it 500? Is it 200? Is it 10? Is it 5? What does it look like? And what's the nature of those stores? So that's part of our evolution and our business process that we're continuing to streamline, is how do we identify what's most appropriate there to maintain sales and also to protect margin and to keep costs down. Then you couple that with, before all of this excitement, we had never leveraged our store inventory to fill digital orders. So as we began to do so, we began to learn that we did not have, consistent inventory accuracy across these doors that would be necessary in order to really confidently honor these requests coming from our digital channel. Then you couple that with, by the way, we have a brand new replenishment system that we have just now released in JDA. So the components are there, but the learning and the evolution of the software and the process is still very much in progress. We continue to look, we continue to get feedback from our stores personnel around, empty shelves, or they've got too much of this, not quite enough of that. We're taking that input in, trying to figure out where in the algorithms or configuration we're missing the mark a little bit. And stores, from their perspective, they're used to their foot traffic coming in. Our Sally Beauty and Cosmoprof associates do a phenomenal job of establishing a relationship with our customers, especially in hair care and hair color lines. And so they were kind of used to what their mix was for our customers coming in. But now you add the digital demand on top, and they're seeing, a breadth of assortment being under more demand. They're seeing, just a greater volume in total coming off. So even our stores are having to learn and adjust to being this omni-channel retailer. So we continue to adjust our replenishment algorithms. We continue to learn better about demand planning. We continue to tune the OMS in terms of what should our distribution groups look like. Should we have some kind of margin control in place? What do those various levers look like that we can continue to pull so that we can protect sales, above all, protect sales, but then also protect margin as well. So we are just, from supply chain to merchandising to store operations to technology, we all continue to kind of embrace this new capability set and how we can best use it.
But we continue to see, I think, the rise a bit here of the CMO, and I don't mean like chief marketing officer, I mean like change management. And so
Yeah.
it's like when we look to manage this change on the people process side, that technology, kind of that term we always hear in the market, it's like that's the enabler, but how are we really going to prepare our people, our teams, our organizations to adapt now to these new ways of doing business? So a lot of organizations, we've seen this rise, change management, specific disciplines as a shared service within an organization. But again, many times consultancies will play this role also just to help facilitate that change.
And, that's such a good point you bring up, Steve, because prior to all of this implementation, we really were somewhat siloed at Sally Beauty. Supply chain kind of did their thing, and store ops kind of did their thing, merch kind of did their thing, because we didn't have quite the emphasis of the cross-channel shopping, and so some of those more collaborative efforts weren't necessarily as important. And as a result, supply chain would talk to technology, or merchandising would talk to technology, or finance would talk to technology, because we were kind of the support system. But as we've gone through this, I have personally observed, and I'm so grateful to see it, so much more cross-collaboration between the business units. Merch has such a great grip on how what they're doing impacts both our stores channel and our digital channel. And our digital team has a great grip on what that relationship is with merchandising. How does it manifest in the store operations? What are the pressures that we're putting on our transportation team in order to enable what we're trying to go after? And just really seeing that increase in cross-business unit collaboration and driving it forward with, technology at the table all the time, listening, make sure nobody gets wild with it, or what will our step be, to support whatever they're coming up with. It's so great, because I really believe that, the sum of the parts is actually much, what is that phrase? I messed it up. But anyway, we're so much better together as a cohesive unit rather than how we would be individually.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Yeah. The technology stuff that we're focused on in our careers and our job responsibilities, we're not trying to discount, how difficult and challenging it could be sometimes, but I'm telling you the people side of it, to make sure that what we're doing sets up our teams to be successful. That's good. That's good. Love to see that interoperability that's happening on the people side also.
For sure.
Okay. All right, folks. In the interest of time, so we just talked about our first two themes. Just to quickly recap, talked about the growing investments in supply chains around this optimization theme. Great. Then we start talking about, well, what about the process side? We have the investments in, all these different areas. What about the process side? Where's that focus? So we just discussed this. And we're going to transition to our third and final theme that we have organized for today. And this is really around this whole theme of the customer experience, or the experiential layer here, and not just around, the purchase, that moment of purchase with the client, but all the way through the customer purchasing life cycle here, including post-purchase. So just some additional brief context here. And then again, we'll hear about some really interesting insights from Sally Beauty Holdings here. So what are these results showing? So again, that study went out and it spoke to your peers, again, in areas of e-commerce, supply chain, inventories. And when they talked to respondents, they, one of the areas that we really wanted to dig into was around, tell us a little bit more around digital and how it's providing self-service across the entire customer purchasing lifecycle. Like, how is digital really enabling self-service for your clients, whether you service consumers in a B2C model or a business customer in some variation of a B2B model? And so, as you might imagine, there was a lot of examples that were cited where digital does provide this self-service, and there's automation and there's rules that govern things like order placement, making an inquiry on an order, even having to modify an order. But so that's part of the study that we did with Forrester. But what you're depicting on the screen here is something really interesting that we took away from this, because this depicts the response and the conclusions when we asked a follow-up question. And the follow-up question was what you see depicted here is, why then, when your customers are contacting you via one of your channels, whether it's a store, whether they're calling into customer care, talking to a branded associate, what are the top reasons that they're making contact with you outside of just digital? What was really interesting, you see here the top reasons why one of their customers are contacting one of their people. And it's in those same areas that they said that they had a lot of automation and they had a lot of self-service enabled via digital. So these are the top reasons. Why are they contacting someone in person? Well, they're making an inquiry on an order, right? They need to do modifications on an order. They need to do something around reverse logistics, like a return, process an RMA, something like that. So the takeaway here, I think we saw from the study was, again, there's just a ton of opportunities that still remain around how supply chains can enhance this overall customer experience. Again, just another takeaway from that report, and if you're interested, we'd be happy to provide it to you. Okay, so with that, just a little bit of context here. Again, this digital can blend the physical and the digital world. Sonoma, at Sally Beauty, I got to tell you, you guys have done so many just super interesting things around this whole DIY thing with consumers and this mode that we were placed in over the last couple of years, whether it's due to COVID or other reasons. But I'm going to throw it your way now. I know you have so many interesting insights here around, again, what Sally Beauty Holdings has been doing around, again, just enhancing the overall customer experience.
Excuse me. So yes, this is, this is another area where you can't get comfortable. I put a BOPIS experience out there, I'm good to go. I think our customers will expect us to continue to innovate. Their shopping requirements and expectations will continue to evolve, so we've got to stay close to this. There's a couple of things that we're doing as it relates to both the post-purchase experience and then also some improvements that we're trying to make to avoid of course we want to talk to our customers anytime, but hopefully we want to make some improvements where they're not calling in to report on an issue or things like that. We're trying to do better on our technology to give them information up front and then meet the commitments that we make. So a couple of things that we're doing is we have internally, we are in the middle of improving our communication with our carrier base. Most modern retailers have a good relationship with our vendors, and over EDI or some other transmissions, we're kind of in lockstep with one another as it relates to inbound purchase orders and that sort of thing. But at Sally Beauty, we have a need to continue to grow in how we understand where our carriers are and to continue to manage to on-time delivery, et cetera. So we're looking at that to make sure that our inventory is in the network where we thought it was going to be, and we can confidently rely on it for order fulfillment. So it's one of the things we're doing internally. Externally, we are trying to give our digital customer more information as she's shopping. Today, we're not great at it. She or he can enter into a same-day delivery 2-hour delivery experience or a buy online pickup in store experience, and they can do that obviously while they're shopping and kind of therefore have their expectations set. But when they're in a ship to me mode, where we're going to ship to their home or business, we are not as good at communicating up front. Here's when we think your order is going to deliver. Here's how many shipments you're going to get. More of that Amazon experience that we all seem to try to be living up to. So that's where we're kind of focused next. We're looking at IBM has some relatively new offerings around some microservices that would allow us to be more transparent and more timely with available inventory, so that we can do a couple things. We can tell the customer, if you'd like for us to ship this to you, we're all for it. It's going to come to you in 2 different shipments, and your estimated delivery dates are whatever they are. And give them the opportunity during that checkout experience to go, okay, I can live with that, or that doesn't work for me, I need this more timely, let me see if I can switch to a BOPIS or same-day delivery model. And I think when we do that and we do it well, we'll give the customer way more information in his or her hands so that the expectation is set, and then we need to deliver to it. The other thing that we continue to rely on is that last mile delivery with our carriers and our couriers. We are leveraging a partner called Delivery Solutions Provider, which handles that last mile for us on same-day delivery. And we're looking at ways to improve our relationships there in terms of visibility and more consistent meeting our SLAs for those deliveries. Because if we've done everything else right, but the courier goofs it up at the end, then from the customer's perspective, it was still a Sally Beauty issue. So we want to make sure that we're really managing that courier network in a way that honors the intention of Sally Beauty and the expectations of our customers. So those are some things that we're doing on the Sally side. On the Beauty Systems Group side with our B2B, we are trying to be, we're trying to put way better technology in the hands of our direct sales consultants. These are the folks that go to the salons, they have the relationships with the stylists, and they are helping facilitate their order and reorder process. We're trying to give that DSC much more information about the customer's shopping history, their buying patterns, and help kind of facilitate that order process better. Today, they have an application, but you know, to state it kindly, it needs some revitalization. So we're really excited to be able to give them handheld devices that they can easily interact with their customers on and facilitate a more optimal shopping experience, which again would do a better job of stating that estimated delivery date, explaining how many shipments they're going to receive with this order. And so we're really excited to bring that forward, both for the DSCs and for those stylists and salon customers. We think that's really going to go a long way.
Hey, I think there's great points. And I think if there's anything we see, listen, for those of us, I know we've all worked in this space for so long, boy, there was just that, and this will never go away, is that there was so much focus on the experiential side of it. You know, how can digital enhance the experiential side of it for a client? So show them the right assortment, give them the right content to the right person at the right time, the targeted marketing, the merchandising tactics, promotional type things, easy check, all that will never go away. That stuff will never go away. I think the interesting thing that we've seen certainly over the more recent past in our space is just this, everything, Sonoma, that you just talked through, that you see depicted a little bit here on the screen from the study, is just that these supply chain pieces and inventory and order issues, man, this is becoming more and more important. There's just no deniability here on just like the importance it's playing to the overall customer experience here. So really interesting. I think it's just an exciting time to be in our space, and that's why we're all still cranking away, really busy. So thank you so much, Sonoma, around all those great points. With that, as you might imagine, I think our timing is doing pretty well here. We did want to reserve a little bit of time for questions that probably were surfaced through the tool and maybe the chat interface here. So with this, I'm going to pause real quick and just see if we have some questions queued up.
Of course, thanks so much, Sonoma and Steve. So a couple of questions we had coming in are, first, when you initially discussed how supply chain operations are being prioritized, there was a lot of mention to technology and process enhancements, but what other personnel changes have you seen?
That's a great question. Especially in our supply chain optimization capabilities that we've delivered with this renewed discipline around demand planning, specifically around planning the individual channels so that we can buy for the aggregate need. That is a brand new concept to Sally Beauty. I mean, honestly, prior to this, we had, you know, we basically planned for our stores channels and then just kind of bought a little bit more in anticipation of digital growth. But that doesn't cut it anymore. So we have implemented this idea of demand planning by channel, where our e-com channels are explicitly planned for, our full service channel is explicitly planned for, and our stores channels. And then again, in aggregate, we make the purchases in order to support all three channels across our various supply chain node stores and DCs. And that discipline is brand new, which means that team is brand new, and we continue to grow into that. I think that's probably the biggest impact from a personnel perspective at Sally Beauty, because you know the rest of it were things that we were doing. We were replenishing our stores, we were sending promotional goods to our stores, we were interacting with our vendors, our stores were receiving and selling, our warehouses were picking, packing, and shipping. So we know how to do the basics, but I think the biggest impact really is on that demand planner role for Sally.
Yeah, that's a great point on the demand planning piece. I think from a practice perspective, we've probably seen a couple of things here just to follow on a bit on that demand planning. We kind of see the role now of, you know, if I'll just look at order management as one example here, if it's providing more of a consolidated view of demand, like we know this is focused on inventory optimization and order execution in a bunch of different ways, but if it has more of a consolidated view on demand, let's throw that back to, you know, the planning group. around a number of different initiatives. So we see some work there that's going on. And I'll just echo something, a second example here on the people process side that we mentioned a little bit earlier with that, and that was around this change management piece. And so when I say it, I know I got right into previously that example around just the people process side, but even in this change management theme, I think there's common things that we'll address here. It's like the case for change, having to make sure that all disciplines are reflected on what their needs are. So those stakeholder interviews, setting up a communication plan and execution plan and how these changes will happen across all the different omni-channels, and then the execution of that. Probably less on the case for change, but again, that change management theme around stakeholder interviews, communication and execution plan, and then the spot on execution of that. That's the other thing that we see here. Technology projects are hard, you got to focus on them, but when it gets time to the rollout of these things, those are the other areas that we see a lot of work that's going on the people process side.
For sure.
Awesome. So our next question is, have you seen examples where supply chain visibility and order transparency has directly resulted in customer loyalty?
Well, I would say that we've seen the impact when we're not good at, providing that visibility to where's my order, specifically around split shipments. When, a customer places one order, one box shows up and half her order's in it, the natural inclination is, well, where's the rest of it? And so I think we've, and that drives call volume into our call centers. And so that's what we're aiming at, trying to get better upfront to say it's coming in 2 packages. One will be there on Tuesday, one will be there on Wednesday. And again, giving her that information while she's still in checkout, and she can make a different decision if that's not what she's game for. So I think that will go a longer way, because like I said, we've really seen the impact of it, and it's not great when we're not good at that kind of transparency and visibility, or when we miss our when we say 2-hour delivery, when we pay 3-hour delivery, it better be 2 or 3 hours, and we get lots of call volume when it's outside of that expectation, which is why we continue to focus on hardening those solutions, managing our courier network, et cetera.
Yeah, great examples. Yeah, if I just paraphrase from a practice perspective, it's all these either inventory or order execution, just data points that are now being surfaced much earlier in the customer experience, much earlier in the customer experience. So no longer do you have to, get to a shopping bag or a cart to see these things, but rather you're going to see it much earlier in that customer experience, so you can achieve a lot of the things, Sonoma, that you just talked about. So, and sometimes it's used as a merchandising tactic. Okay, that's fine. But it's also around, this is the information I think that customers, whether you're a consumer in a retail sense, or again, I know I'm harping on a bit this B2B sense, but again, a lot of work that's also going on there for that business customer, right? They have just so many scenarios they're trying to achieve, and they want that same information earlier in just their in their business transactions that they're doing on behalf of the company that they work for. So earlier in the customer experience, for sure. And last point I'll make here is a couple of those studies I know I've highlighted for you today. There is specific KPI results that you're seeing that is captured in those studies. So again, if you're interested in those, contact us and we'll get them out to you.
Great. And one of our last questions coming in is a 2-part question. It is, are you making any considerations around returns optimization and reduction? And where do you see that being prioritized in your overall supply chain strategy?
So it's a great question. And one of the things I completely failed to mention is that I've mentioned the supply chain and the digital transformation work that we've been through. In that same time frame, we also rolled out the Oracle X-Store point of sale application to all 5,400 doors in North America for us across Valley and BSG, which, as you can imagine, created a whole new opportunity for us to have better execution in our stores, to participate in this whole order fulfillment capability, and then also in this returns. One of the things that so as a general statement, in the beauty business, we don't necessarily, I was in big box retail before and kind of had that idea in my head as it relates to returns. relative to that, in the beauty business, for the most part, unless you're getting something damaged or something that was wrong to begin with, you're actually consuming this product, which somewhat limits our returns capability. So we don't have a huge returns consideration, which is great news. But we would like to continue to improve on the returns process when it does happen. So one of the things that we're now able to do is if you can now return your digital order in store, whether it was a BOPIS same-day delivery or ship to me, we can now facilitate that return process in our store, which is great. It's hopefully more convenient for our customers relative to having to ship it back to our DC, which was the previous process. And then once we have them in the store, hopefully we are able to not only make this order right, but to reestablish the relationship with the customer and be able to provide them something that is either comparable to what they ordered or exceeds their expectations. So beyond that, I don't know that we've had a lot of focus on our returns reduction, but it's a great, it's often a step in the order cycle that we either forget or ignore or hope that doesn't happen. But it's perhaps one of the most important processes to be able to optimize, because by the very nature of a return, you've got a customer that's not happy with her or his shopping experience. So it's a great question and great challenge. We need to continue to focus on that for sure.
Yeah, great points. A couple additional anecdotal things is I can guarantee you're going to hear more about this coming out of this upcoming holiday season. We see it every January. Every January, you hear just about, the success of online for the holiday season. And I think some current projections are coming out to surpass like the 2 billion mark, for this upcoming holiday season. That's great. Every January quickly follows and you hear about just the volume of returns. I think last year it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 30-ish% on just, the return logistics needs. And so you're going to see probably more this year. And so I think Sonoma, your points were great around this, is like, how can you use some of these supply chain investments to optimize, just the reverse logistics piece of this. And so your example there of, buy something online, you can now return it, not just back to the DC, but you can bring it into a store location. Awesome. Perfect example of that. And there's all these downstream effects of that too, right? Now somebody comes in the store and there's opportunity there. So anyway, those great examples there. And the last point I'll bring up too is around these reverse logistics and returns is like the growing, I think, use that we see of marketplaces. And so now for folks that are participating in marketplaces, meaning taking a portion of their assortment, not just selling it through their own channels, but through third-party marketplaces, where there is a reverse logistics scenario there, it's like, how are you managing this day? And I think today we see a lot of this that's going on. So a lot of phone, personal contact with that, but I think we're starting to see a lot of requirements and some really interesting work around the role that order management can play in facilitating, again, reverse logistics, but not through a channel that you own, one that you're participating within a third party.
Great. Thank you both so much, Sonoma and Steve, for all of your great insights during this session. So with that, we're going to bring this program to an end. And on behalf of Perficient, E-Tail, and the WBR Insights team, we thank you for your time and have a great day.